Dr. Fornari is currently the Associate Dean for Educational Skills Development, Professor of Science Education, Population Health, and Family Medicine. She is at Hofstra Northwell School of Medicine. She's also the Assistant Vice President for Faculty Development at Northwell. So you can see she's got so many other things that she's also doing that don't necessarily come with formal titles. But you can see why she's prepared to do these 3 sessions and then meet people all day long. Dr. Fornari received her Bachelor's of Science degree from Cornell in Nutrition, her Master's of Science from Columbia University Teachers College in Nutrition Education, and then in 2001 she earned her doctoral degree from Columbia University Teachers College in Higher Education, College Teaching, and Academic Leadership. Her doctoral research focused on improving teaching and learning in the discipline of ethical decision-making, and her professional interests continue to include bringing professionalism, communication skills, and ethics as paramount to the education and practice of health professionals. She also likes to bring a little action into everything she does, and so she's here to present active learning in large groups, a team sport. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Alice Fornari.
Thank you. The Southern hospitality has certainly prevailed since I'm here, so I really appreciate it. I lived in Portsmouth, Virginia for 1 year, so I think I came to Roanoke one other time because my roommate, I was a VISTA volunteer during that time it was VISTA, it's AmeriCorps now, and she was from Roanoke or Blacksburg.
Blacksburg?
Yeah, so she took me home to her house one time, so I think that's when I was here last. So that was in 1974. So it's a long time ago. Right. But it's a pleasure, and I had a big journey to get here, and I'm glad I was able to get here since there was some complications, so it's great. So this is who I am, that's true. So we have a partnership between Northwell Health and Hofstra University. It's a true 50-50 partnership between the health system and the medical school. So it's a combined relationship, I should say. It's a partnership. I just want to mention that I have a disclosure that I'm the editor of this manual, and I believe in active learning as a pedagogy. And this manual and this group really has a great chance of somebody winning it. I brought 1 manual for each group to be raffled off based on your sign-in, and somebody will get a copy. The manual is $10 online if you're not an IAMC member, and $5 if you are. The association that produced it, International Association of Medical Science Educators. So it's very reasonable, but I did download it and then I bound it so it's like a little book.
And our med school is a member of IAMC, so I think we can get the $5.
You get the $5,
Yep.
So if anybody wanted their own copy. And it's really a manual, so it talks about how to do active learning. It's set up as a manual. Okay. So my active learning interest really started. So obviously I changed careers. I had 2 degrees in nutrition. I taught college for 20 years. I went to get my doctorate so I could become a college dean. That was my career goal. So I needed a doctorate in education. I luckily live in New York. There's Teachers College, and I went there. Everything was nice. I got a job as an associate dean at a college after that. Along the way, I met a physician who decided that I needed to be in med ed and teach doctors how to teach. That was at Einstein Medical School. She created a whole job for me with grant money she had, and I went to Einstein Medical School and started a whole life in med ed that I never anticipated. And then I got recruited by the people who created a new medical school. Like here, we're 1 year younger than your school. So we graduate our 3rd class instead of our 4th. We're just 1 year younger. And they recruited me, and the idea of being at a new school, I was there 2 years before it opened, so I was really part of the planning process. And that's sort of how I changed careers into med ed, very unplanned. But when I got to Teachers College, which was the mainstay of my training, education, this ERIC series was with the Association of Higher Education, and ERIC is a educational database that you can actually search for, like PubMed, but for educational stuff. They had these reports, and this report from 1991 was the landmark report on active learning. I always loved teaching, and I always loved understanding how people learn. So this little book, it's a little paperback book, it's not a big deal, but really became a Bible for me as I started my doctoral work to understand active learning. So it's a great little book. It actually looks like that. And Charles Bonwell, who is one of the authors, the author is Bonwell and Eisen, Bonwell was one of the authors, he states that active learning, students participate in the process and when they're doing something besides listening. So one of the things I like to compare this to is patient care. When a student is doing good interviewing of a patient, what are they doing? What's the skill if they're doing a good job interviewing? What do you assess? What's the top thing you assess?
Asking questions and listening.
Listening, right. Really, if they're listening to the patient and asking the right questions. But the person really in the center of the room is who? The patient, who's telling their story. That's what they're doing, hopefully. So that's the interaction. In the classroom, with active learning, who's the main people usually, even with active learning? Well, hopefully the students, but generally, the faculty are still the person who's the lead. So even with active learning, and an example of that is like audience response system. People say, oh, I used ARS, audience, do you ever use that here? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I used ARS, I'm doing active learning, right? People say this all the time. Just because everybody's holding a clicker and whatever you're, now today you use Pull Everywhere on phones, whatever you're using. And people say that was active learning because they all got to respond. But the students haven't even said anything, all they did was click a button. That's not active learning. You are trying to engage them, but that's not active learning. They are still in a very passive role, and the teacher is still the mainstay. And until she engages, or he engages the students on that data that's appearing on our screen from those polls, and makes a discussion out of that, and engagement on learning, it doesn't become active learning. But most people, they flash these PowerPoint screens with the data by and don't really engage learners. So many times people think I'm doing active learning, I'm asking questions, things like that, but it's really not active learning because the teacher is still at the center and not the learner. So it's really important that there's student involvement. So I'm going to show you a quick YouTube video. How many people in this room know Eric Mazer? He happens to be the keynote speaker at IAMC in 2 weeks, and he's great, I think. I've never heard him speak personally, but on YouTube he's great, I think. And he has these 2 quotes. I mean, I've read his articles. And one is, I thought I was a good teacher until I discovered my students were just memorizing information rather than learning to understand the material. The lecture is the transfer of the notes of the lecturer to the notes of the student without passing through either. Okay? So, let me get my keyboard. We're changing how we do this a little.
Minimize.
Yeah, I'll minimize, right? Okay, there it is, good. We're only listening to 2 minutes and 46 seconds. This is a 13-minute talk.
As an assistant professor of physics. And when I started teaching, I never asked myself, how am I going to teach?
Oh, there it is.
So you do something new in your body. It should be the first thing you ask yourself. It's really clear in my mind what I was going to do. I was going to lecture.
Okay.
After all, I had learned physics by listening to my professor's lecture, so I assumed that I had learned by listening to lectures, and therefore I thought, I'm going to lecture for my students. So I started teaching. I was asked to teach a course that none of my colleagues here really wanted to teach. It was physics for pre-medical students. These were not students who wanted to learn physics. They already hated physics before coming into my classroom, but they just had to learn physics. You know, most of my colleagues, when they used to teach that course, they would feel very unhappy at the end of the semester because the students would give them very poor ratings. You know, pre-meds are not very kind to physicists. But that didn't happen for me. I got very high ratings. It's a 5-point scale. And I typically got 4.2, 4.5 on a 5-point scale. Also, even though these were not physicists, but pre-meds, I could give them some really hard problems that, you know, I'm not sure I would do well on an exam. So the students gave me high ratings. They did well on what I considered complicated exams. I very quickly started to believe that I was the world's best physics teacher. And that illusion, because it turned out it was a complete illusion, went on for many, many years. I would go through my classroom on a rocket-propelled cart. This was, many years ago, 30 years ago. I would climb up to the ceiling. I would have this big ball that would be on a pendulum, make it swing from my nose to the other side of the classroom, and I'd come back, and the whole class would gasp, thinking that the ball would smash my nose and come back. I mean, it was like a Hollywood show. And I had these high ratings. And my students did well on exams. I was a star. But it was an illusion. Because after about 7 years, I read an article that claimed that students learn nothing or next to nothing in their introductory physics courses. And the article showed data from thousands of students in the southwest of the United States. Eric, go.
So you could watch the rest of this on your own. He goes on to confess all this stuff. He really does an excellent job with it. But it's the idea that he had this, epiphany of like, what am I doing? I have high ratings, my exam scores are good, so the external motivators are there, but are they really learning something? And he realized they weren't. He changed his whole style of teaching. And he's written tons about this, and he happens to be great. So, it's a great YouTube, and if you happen to be at IAMSA, you can listen to him. So I wanted everybody to take a minute to do a quick activity, a think, pair, and share. I know it's late in the day, believe me, I agree with you. But I want you to think, and since we're a very small group, I'm gonna we'll do a little differently. Let's think, and you could pair with one person for just a minute, but we're gonna share as a group some thoughts. So think about a time where passive learning happened and you wish you could improve that, and what would you want to do? Or think about a time when active learning really happened and you were really proud of it. In other words, so it was really great active learning, or it was passive learning and you really want to improve it and you're thinking how. And just think about an incident, if you can, for a minute in all your teaching, and perhaps just turn to the person closest to you. You're sort of alone, maybe you could come next to him. And just think a few minutes, just quickly. You three could just talk, just a minute. We're gonna have a think, pair, and share. Oh, you could talk together. And you could join anybody you want. Yeah, so hopefully, I mean, if I get in at 10, it's fine. Right. I have a cat picking me on the other end, so. Good. Okay, who would like to talk about something just quickly? We're not doing this for a long time, but this is a great interactive learning. How many people have used Think, Pair, and Share before? So this is a great way in any classroom that requires no setup. Most likely students are sitting next to each other. Think, pair, and share. Depending if you're in a lecture hall, people just have to turn around a little bit sometimes, but it's a really great. And really, you shouldn't be talking for more than 20 minutes at a time. So after that, you should stop and do a think, pair, and share, if it's your only easy form of active learning for that talk. So who would like to share something? And the reason I want to demonstrate the sharing is a lot of times you do the think and the pair, but you don't do the sharing. And the sharing is really where the learning happens. So you do want to go to the share for at least 1 or 2 students, even if you're in a hurry. Your timing is of the essence. Anybody want to share a story?
Português,
In what area?
In pediatrics. We
Yeah.
teach the pediatrics the medical students pediatrics in the outpatient clinic. So we do have to teach the same subjects, right? And every group, every 2 weeks, there is a new group. We have to give this talk about vaccines that we hate because they learn nothing from it. And we spend so much time talking to them
And you
about
do it how
these
many times or
vaccines
something?
and what.
A year, yeah, we do it, I don't know how many times.
Okay.
Do it
Probably
many
something
times a
like that,
year.
yeah.
It's boring for us, boring for them, they learn nothing. And then, so that's the basic example that we just, like coming up with ideas, how can we do this better? But they don't know nothing, they need an introduction. Then when the active learning happens is when we have the patients and, she's coming from Syria and she got this and this vaccine, what she needs now. And they go and look for the information, they pair the vaccines and they start counting and that's when they learn. And whatever happened before, we don't know whether it's necessary or not, whether we really need to do that, how can we do it better. So that's what we do.
Anybody have any suggestions? How long is your talk?
10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
Oh, that's all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
They get all of childhood vaccines in about 15 minutes.
15 minutes, and it's still boring.
Yeah, well, yes.
CDC.
Yeah, they have the CDC recommendation, they have our clinic schedule, and then we go through and discuss each vaccine with them.
really quick.
Anybody have any thoughts?
Maybe to pair it with additional information, the whole anti-vaccine movement, maybe you can tie that in with some of the talk you're giving. That's
Something controversial.
something that's controversial or needs to be out in the public media a lot.
Right.
You may not necessarily reinforce the material, but it may make it more active in the process.
Right, I think that's a great suggestion.
Probably maybe pre-assigning some work on vaccines so that when they come in, we can work through these scenarios.
That's another great suggestion. So they could read about vaccines, they could read the CDC guidelines, they could read your
We could give them
vaccine
a
schedule.
video of us giving the boring talk, they could watch for 10
So
minutes,
that's
and when
the
they
other-
come in, we could do the,
Your pediatric
Spend
guy
our
was here
time.
this morning, and he spoke about the same topic, and he said that he wanted to make videos of the talks. He said 30 minutes, I said 30 minutes was too long, they should be no more than 15 to 20 minutes, the videos, 30 is a little long, and the students could watch the videos, and then that would be their pre-work, and then they would come in and you would engage them. You could do a controversial case about vaccines, you could do how to talk to somebody who,
incorporate motivational, whatever you want to
yes,
use.
any topic related to vaccines or, for example, my child who goes to pediatrician, won't give all the vaccines required at the same time. Thinks it's too many vaccines. It's not like they won't do the vaccines, but they won't follow the schedule. This is my own child. Who's not a pediatrician.
We
but I'm
can show
sure
them the
child is a
evidence, why not to do it that way?
Right, so I'm just saying, you could give scenarios, why won't they do all the vaccines, that's their own. Luckily, they're going for the vaccines if you want to know the truth, which could have been another
Thank
option.
goodness.
Right, so my point is that you could try to controversial stuff that might engage them, but there's no reason if all that factual information is available, that you shouldn't front load it. It's the concept of the flipped classroom when you front load that factual information, especially such basic stuff. And you have to make them accountable. So if you start to go over that factual information in the session, and because they didn't read it, then at that point, you've defeated your own purpose. So you cannot flip yourself back to going over what they didn't do. Say, this was pre-assigned, we assumed you did this, we're going to teach the way we plan to teach, and if you didn't do the pre-work, I suggest you go home and look at the pre-work to make sure it's clear. You really have to hold your guns to that. I had many discussions with many faculty about that. Because if you don't, and it's something in Hofstra we do emphatically, and if a faculty member comes in and teaches what the pre-work was, we give them one more chance, or we don't invite them back to give that talk. So every new talk is evaluated. We just had a pulmonologist who did that. I don't think he meant to do that, but he did. He started his talk, I told the story in another session, but I guess it doesn't matter to different people. So he starts his talk, his first slide is, he's doing pulmonary gas exchange, oxygen, carbon dioxide. And he starts his time with a video of Mount Everest and someone who's going to climb Mount Everest and what's going to happen to their gas exchange. It's, oh my This would be a great talk. He's going to talk about gas exchange through Mount Everest. That was the only slide on Mount Everest. He did a textbook talk like he would give to residents, very passively on gas exchange. Never went back to Mount Everest, and that was the end of it. And here he had the golden opportunity to make this a very engaged, active learning experience, assuming the student did the pre-work. I think he felt they didn't do the pre-work. Whatever. So we gave him all this feedback, and we'll see if he'll self-correct.
Do you find that if the faculty holds people accountable to doing that, the word sort of spreads?
Yes.
In our situation where we have a new group every 6 weeks?
It spreads. Oh, it spreads. Believe me, if you do something, they tell the other students. Absolutely. So this is just an example of how to do some active learning quickly. So Jeff Norman is a very, very famous statistician from the University of Toronto. He's pretty well known in the med ed world as a rigorous scholar. And he wrote in 2004, which I know seems like a long time ago, that despite the best efforts of curriculum designers who tried desperately to fill every working hour with some required activity, the interesting thing, this was 2004, I don't even think people were trying to do that then, but maybe in Toronto they were. The reality is that most learning, whether it's done morning, noon, or night, is done alone. So what he was saying, you could do all this active stuff in the classroom, but they were to go home and study on their own, and they're bright kids, and they were no learner. Just like they do for step 1, they study and they learn. So he's saying all this activity, why do we need it, being the devil's advocate? And what he's trying to say is, activity leads to superior learning, but there you have to make synthesis happen, not just activity. And you need dialogue between teacher and learner, but it needs to be driven by the learner, not the teacher. So you really need to put the learner at the center, and the teacher occupies a central role as an interpreter of knowledge. So they're not there doing nothing, they're helping to interpret the knowledge based on foundational pre-work. But that foundational pre-work, if it's being taught in the session, you can't have this active learning style. So passive learning here with the little active learner on my right, over here with filling with knowledge and the bucket's full, and here the faucet is taking all the water out, the knowledge out, is because with passive learning, you don't see this integration interpretation. So the vaccines is basic, but what's the integration of that into patient care? What's the interpretation if somebody doesn't do the vaccines? What happens if, like my children, they don't do them on schedule? So that's more the integration and the interpretation that you need to be responsible for. And it will also not make you bored as a teacher, it will make you more engaged. This is a typical Bloom's taxonomy, and what we want to be doing is focusing on applying, analyzing, and evaluating. I'm not going to worry about creating, which is like, basic science or science clinical research, creating new knowledge. Let's just get here. These 2 layers here are really the foundational knowledge that should be part of all pre-work. So remembering and understanding basic material. And then we want to work in these 3 layers. So there were 2 studies that were done that I have here. One is 2004, it's in the same issue as the Jeff Norman one. And it talks about a group of residents. And I had trouble finding active learning studies with residents. But what's interesting, both studies say the same thing, the next one, which is with medical students. And in this study was IM, pediatric, and family medicine residents. They had 2 groups. One they did active learning, and one they did didactic, straight lecture. And even with the reduced amount of time of, lecture, the same amount of content was covered. There was no detrimental effect on knowledge acquisition or attitude enhancement, and the teaching strategies led to more active engagement. And they judged active engagement by doing direct observation of the 2 learning groups. So they had somebody observing the passive group and the active group. But what happens is the teaching strategies led to more engagement, and then this study was really nice because they went on the floors it was like a month later, or maybe 3 months later. It was about a month later, I think. And they observed the learners on the floors to see if they were applying the knowledge they got. And there was no difference with the passive and the active. They both got knowledge and were applying. But the learners valued the active learning sessions less. They valued them less. For whatever reason, they just didn't value the effort that went into the active learning. So the perception of the process